What's up guys, it's Londy from Dara Mactire. So I wanted to take some time to actually discuss the issues that we've got going on in Ilum and the ideas that I have on how to fix them. Hope you enjoy these ideas, pass them on to your friends, let it be known so that this can actually go into effect. Alright, this first idea actually goes into effect if you're on a server that doesn't have a high population for one faction and you find that you're basically player versus crate. The idea is make it so that crates actually spawn in each node. I know it's a simple idea, but unfortunately at the moment what's going on is it's like 20 to 30 of your own faction fighting over the same boxes, and it does actually take you a day to get a daily done. Ironic, huh? Alright, well this next part of the same idea actually involves those same crates. Make it so that if you're in an ops group, anybody who collects a crate gets credit for the entire op group. Now, it does sound simple again, but unfortunately, every time someone collects a box, that means that you have another spawn timer for that same box to respawn and collect on it. If everybody in the op group gets it, that means that the entire ops group is getting a benefit from something that one person did. Okay guys, let's jump into the meat of the problem. Right now, with our system the way it is, you have players coming in with no organization whatsoever. Yes, you have ops groups, but unfortunately what happens is you have one faction overpopulate the actual zone and the other faction is left to just sit in their base. Now how can you fix this? I'm suggesting a class intelligent 4v4 queue system. What does this mean to us? Well, simple. If you have 4 people that queue up on one side and 4 people who queue up on the other side, those 8 people get in to Ilum. Okay, now it's simple, but unfortunately right now it's just whoever goes is whoever goes. I don't want you to think that this limits your attendance if you don't have a solid 4. If you have one person, you can still have one person enter Ilum, but try to organize the queue system so that it actually picks people based on class, if needed, for healers, as well as the amount of players. Attendance in Ilum currently is a joke. The more people you have on one side, the less fun it becomes for the other side. And unfortunately, there is an issue with people of one faction sitting in their base until they have enough people to completely dominate Ilum, and the other faction can't get anybody in. Making that queue system work in, making it so that the attendance is actually built off of a queue system, would rebalance the scales of Ilum, making it more enjoyable, more playable, and increase the performance, because currently when you have that many people in one small area, unfortunately it becomes unplayable. You get 2 frames a second. I have individuals that I know that don't even want to go to Ilum because the playability just drops. It's not worth being there. So if we fix the attendance and make it so that it's balanced per Ilum, it'll be more enjoyable and people will stay. We actually want a PvP in Ilum. But currently what's going on is people push all the way to one faction side and sit in front of the base and just try to grip someone in order to kill them. Or sit there spamming AoEs. That's not fun. That's not PvP. My idea of PvP is when you have a small knit group of people who are actually trying to conquer an area and defend an area. Not sit within their base, trying to be farmed to get their daily done to get out of there. It's not enjoyable. If we made Ilum like another battleground, people would be more inclined to stay there as well. I'm proposing that each node, center, north, and south, have a resource timer, and the more individuals that you have at that place, the faster the resource timer ticks. Once a resource is consumed and a faction owns it, a spawn point unlocks, allowing you to push further towards the base. This will make it so that individuals actually want to fight for those points, because it means that when they respawn, they actually respawn closer to pushing the enemy into their base to win the game. Now another idea I have to actually make it so that it's not so one-sided once you push people to their base and they actually have the ability to fight back is increase the spawn timer the further you get from your base. So for example, let's say my team decides, we're going to capture mid and then we're going to push all the way to their base, and then once we push to their base, we're just sitting there in front and some of them are still fighting outside, so the game hasn't completely ended. If they kill us and we control mid or north or south, whichever one is closest to their base, we respawn right there. But if we get an increased timer the further we are from our base, it makes it so that they actually are motivated to come out and try to kill us to push us back. If you don't do that, it's the same issue. People will just respawn, hop down, and continue to farm. I'm trying to make it so that people actually are motivated to step foot outside of their bases, combat, and then try to play. This next idea actually involves not getting credit for killing someone that just recently died. I understand the reason why they put it in the game was to avoid people win trading, in essence, just trading kills to gain valor or to actually complete objectives within Ilum. But if you think of it this way, now that I'm trying to suggest adding spawn points and removing flight paths and making it so that zones are controlled and you have to actually head back to those zones, that's going to be in essence a timer of its own for an individual to get back to that point to help defend. Getting no credit for someone that you killed again because they've recently been killed or whatnot is irrelevant at that point. Removing flight paths. I think this is key because number one, we're trying to make this into a queue system where people queue up, you get even faction teams, they zone in, and they try to fight for control of Ilum. By removing the flight paths, it does two things. It makes it so that people can't fly behind the enemy team and back cap. They actually have to go through the push that's being done. And two, it makes it so that it's more of an intimate setting. You're going to have people that are going to be walking from point to point. So you're going to have PvP combat in between those areas. Right now, you don't see it. You see fighting in mid, fighting in north, and fighting in south. But if people fight in between when they're trying to get to a point because they no longer have a flight path, they can't sneak behind somebody, that means that there's actual more PvP going on. Okay, so what do I mean by increased spawn points that only activate once nodes are taken? Well, for example, there currently are 2 flight points that are outside of the actual bases, and when you die, you spawn at those points. If you control a node beyond that point, you control that spawn point, meaning the enemy, if they don't control it, they'd spawn back at their base, being pushed back even further, and if they do control it, then you'd be spawned back beyond that point. Now, why is this important? Well, because I'm trying to make this more of a tug of war. You know, people push and tug and push and tug until eventually one faction completely takes over the other side and pushes back the enemy team completely with respawn timer or what have you into their base, and the game is completed. Okay, this next idea actually involves people sitting in their base and just turtling up. I want to make it so that you don't get credit for the objectives or your daily or your weekly if you're sitting in your base, because honestly, you're not PvPing. You should not be rewarded for ill play. You should be rewarded, however, for coming outside and trying to fend off the enemy faction. Now, be it that there's going to be a spawn timer with increased spawn timer with the further that they are from their own node, or if they don't control center or north or south, that would make it so that it makes sense. Okay, so let's go out there, let's fight, let's push them back. They're going to respawn, so they're not going to sit there farming us. We have a chance. Now, seeing as I'm suggesting that all of this be revolved around a queue system, that would make it more in line with war zones, and doing so would mean that they would have to change the objectives for the daily as well as the weekly. They're going to retain the 30 kills because obviously that would be, it'd be easy enough to get. But what happens if you join one of them late and you don't have a lot of time, or you can't really spend as much time as another individual because you have a job, you have a child, or whatever have you? If you make it so that you only really need 1 win in Ilum a day, it'll make it so that you get in, you actually PvP, you're rewarded for a win, and then you can go on your way. Well, how can we make it so that people are actually rewarded for longer fights? I'm going to suggest that the longer the fight goes, the more valor you get. Not only do you get increased valor from nodes being captured, but you also get increased valor over time. So it makes it so that players that want to continue to defend and to push and whatnot, they are rewarded for investing that amount of time in there. They're not just, told, oh, well, you've queued up, you've won, you're done. Make it so that it can become an epic fight should they choose to do it. If you want to get a quick win, and your ops group decides, hey, let's push hard, let's get this complete, you can do that. But if you also want to make this an epic battle of push and shove, then go ahead and award those people for spending more time in Ilum. Now, when does the madness end? Well, honestly, I feel that the only time that it really should end is when the enemy faction's been pushed due to a spawn timer or whatnot completely into their base and they've decided no more pushing out. Once the last individual is killed and they're on spawn timer in their base, that's it. Ilum really has been completely taken over. It should end at that point. If they don't want to come out and fight anymore and they're ready to just give up, you know, they've lost and that's it, it's over. But should they decide that they want to continue to send people outside those lines within a timer, then hey, the fight's still on and the valor's still being gained. These last few bits are just quality of life things, making it so that people actually PvP and it improves the quality of the gameplay while you're there. One of the biggest issues within the game right now is frame rates. If you have people spamming buffs all the time, that's unnecessary frames that are being used for something that honestly should have been done once and called it a day. I'm going to suggest making class buffs an aura. If you happen to be near a bounty hunter, if you happen to be near a warrior, if you happen to be near any class, whatever their respective class buff is, you attain in the form of an aura. It eliminates the need to spam those buffs, and it makes it so that everybody has those buffs should they stay in those PvP groups. If you try to roll off and, you know, go be a hero and be by yourself, you're going to lose those buffs and you're going to become a weaker individual. It motivates people to stick together. It eliminates the need for people to spam buff, reducing frame rate and playability. And it makes it so that the game is more enjoyable, because in PvE you don't want to be spamming buffs. When you're in a war zone, you don't want to be spamming buffs. If someone dies, you know, you gotta rebuff them. It's a pain in the butt. Okay, so I went ahead and took the liberty of making this diagram to give you guys a visual of what I'm talking about, just to sum it all up. So the red zones are obviously going to be zones that you're not going to earn valor in. You're not going to get credit for your daily. You're not going to get credit for your weekly, because you're not fighting. You're not PvPing. You're sitting in your base doing absolutely nothing but waiting for someone to grip so that you can get a kill. Having a turret do the killing for you is not PvP. Now, the green nodes you're going to see, obviously those are the points that you're going to want to capture. So I'm going to suggest that we increase valor. We put an actual timer for resource control on those actual nodes and make it so that PvP actually happens there. Also, on those green nodes, boxes spawn depending on control. For example, if a node is under a struggle at the moment, that node should have boxes spawned on it. Think of it this way. It's resources that are being delivered to the area to be controlled or captured. So those boxes would spawn in points that are being fought for. If nobody's fighting in Ilum and there happens to be no attendance whatsoever, you can still complete your objective by going to the middle and farming those boxes. But if someone controls north and center and they're fighting for south, south would be where those boxes would spawn. And lastly, you're going to have your flight points. I'm going to suggest again these flight points be completely eliminated, because people can back attack from them. You know, you can sneak up behind someone from just going to that flight point from the base and call it a day. No more flight points. Make them spawn points. If you're fighting near there and you control the actual node, you know, right there, then you should spawn there. If you don't control it, you should spawn back at your base where you're getting no valor, forcing you to come out. So all in all, it makes it so that more PvP is going on in Ilum. So I just wanted to close off by saying thank you for taking the time to actually watch this video and listen to my ideas. I know everybody's got a bunch of ideas on how to fix this, and I'd be more than happy to hear them and possibly put them in another video. So if you want, go ahead and visit me on www.youtube.com/LondyXD, and I'd be more than happy to respond to them and take them into consideration. Thanks, and have a great one.